Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to October 10th. It's just flying by. We're well into football season and well into the gauntlet of September, October, November, which is very busy time in MSP IT land. So, MSPinitiative.com. We're going to get our housekeeping done here. Then we'll get into the good stuff. This is where you'll see most of the stuff that we do, including a recording of this session once it's available, which takes you to our podcatcher, our YouTube page. Like, subscribe, download, forward, share, all that good stuff. It is there. Thank you for everybody that came out to MSP Community Minds, both in Nashville and then Denver back a couple weeks ago in September. We had a really good community-based event, including panelists and expert workshop holders. We like this format. I think we got really good feedback from it. We're going to work with other communities going into 2025 to continue this style of format. So stay tuned. So thank you, everyone that was involved. For everyone else, I'm sure you probably know us better for our block parties. And there's not 1, 2, 3, but 4 more for the rest of the year. So if you're headed down or over or into Germany for PAX 8 Beyond Berlin, we will be there. On October 14th, which is this upcoming Monday, we will be taking you to a Oktoberfest themed venue, which will be very fun. So at 9 p.m. on Monday after, and it's in the schedule. So if you look at your PAX 8 Beyond agenda, you'll see the MSP Community Block Party is there. We will be taking you to Brewdog Dog Tap place, which is like a brewery style feel in Berlin. So make sure to register ahead of time. We'll see you there. Then I'm going to turn right back around, head into hopefully a dried out Florida, and hopefully everybody down there is doing okay. I heard that the second of 2 hurricanes has lost some steam coming into Florida, so be safe. But we're hearing that everything should be okay for Miami at DattoCon. So we're going to be on property inside of the Fontainebleau at Live Nightclub, which apparently is a pretty popular place down in South Beach. So on October 29th at 9:30 p.m., you're going to walk into the hotel lobby of the conference venue, and bam, you're going to be right there at Live Nightclub. We have the whole thing locked out for you. No need to walk out the front door and get on any buses. So we'll see you there. Make sure to register ahead of time for DattoCon in Miami. Then, as if we don't like Florida enough, we're headed up from Miami to Orlando for IT Nation. And on November 6th, like we've been doing for the last 8 years in a row, this year at Icon Park, again, we will be bringing you the MSP Community Block Party with our entertainment headliner this year is Flo Rida, because we're in Florida. So why not Flo Rida? Because that's kind of the name of the artist. So definitely join us for that free event for the MSP community and concert here. Make sure to register ahead of time. And then, since we like planes and apparently a lot of time in the air to catch up on binge watching of series of TV shows, we're headed to DattoCon Sydney. So we're the second time this year, we're headed down to Sydney. Apparently we've been missing you guys for so many years because, COVID locked your island down. So we came twice in a few months. So on November 12th, which is the second night of DattoCon Sydney, we're going to literally make a right-hand turn out of the hotel venue, walk down maybe 5 minutes, and we will have a party for you on November 12th at 8:30 p.m. in Darling Harbor in Sydney. So check out our community offers. If you can take advantage of them, great. And our industry calendar, which takes you all the way to the end of the year, which, I don't know, 300 plus events, plenty of things to go to. They're all there for you. That is the housekeeping. And we're off to the third time we're bringing our guest on to the podcast today, Melissa Hockenberry, who I'm sure will tell you a lot of things about her Datto Autotask and DattoCon and Autotask Community Live history, because she's probably been at many of them. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. You're doing things in 3s and 4s, so I'm glad I'm one of the third times here. That's quite an impressive run there. I get to go to Newark in the next couple of weeks. That's like
New Jersey. Jen
I got nothing.
Loves Newark. She just finished watching Sopranos not long ago, so she's all about Newark.
There you go. Well, Jen, I'm 50% Italian, come from 100% Italian mama, so I live Sopranos actually. So, but
she could be on. She should have been on the show.
So yes, I was looking at that DattoCon. I'm like, man, I was just talking to somebody this week about Paris. I got to do the DattoCon Paris with Magnus, who was just on the Channel program All-Star thing, and I've done Barcelona I did the UK. That was actually not. Oh, I did the Netherlands. That was beautiful. I got to do Keukenhof. That the 8 weeks when the garden is in full bloom. I was actually there during that time. And that was amazing because we never really had time around those events, right? Like you
Right.
literally, people are like, "Oh, it's so luxurious." So you're like, "Yeah, the airport really nicely signaged."
The hotel lobby looks really nice and the lobby bar is busy, but like about short of that, I see that in the airport and yeah, no, I get it.
Yep.
I remember the very last Autotask Community Live, right? It was at the Diplomat in Fort Lauderdale or Hollywood, whichever it is. And
Yep.
I remember there were like Bill Clinton was there, Hurricane came in like the week
Yes.
before, like
Yes.
they got the place cleaned up just in time, and like, but like the rest of the area was not happy. In terms of like they were still cleaning up things. So
Yes.
interesting how that all works. And for anyone that hasn't heard me say it in the last 2 days, I saw that Disney World and specifically Cinderella's Castle has been through 77 hurricanes prior to the one that's there right now and has never been damaged. So I don't know what they built that out of, but apparently they figured it out. We should take a
It's
page out of
magic.
Mickey Mouse. Yeah, Mickey
Yeah,
Mouse.
they have a force field around it that is no one else. They figured it
I
out.
mean, they don't make them like they used to.
No, well, that's true. I can't imagine what that thing's made of. We may not want to know what that thing is
Uh,
made of.
it's all in the magic for sure. We'll have to do the underground tour. Maybe they'll tell us.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? They brought back Autotask Community Live as a pre-day to DattoCon. So it's like a whole, like last year, they only expected 300 people to show up, and I think 650 people showed up to that pre-day. So Autotask is still very much in the conversation. I don't know if you knew that.
I did, because I can take credit literally. I was one of that used to be the first boot camps we ever did. Len DiCostanzo, myself, and Steve Knoll did the very first one in Nashville. Or matter of fact, I don't think we did it the first year. We just did the regular like 2.5 day conference, and then the first time we did it, the three of us did it, and that became kind of a, a absolute element of those pre-days. And my last DattoCon Paris was I think it was the first time I did not present on my own. Like I just was supervising the 6 workshops that we did in there. That made my heart happy to hear that was coming back and that there's such a great response because in reality, conferences are 100% about education. Like good conferences, that is truly not just a word they throw around. It's about like you walk out better using the product. I just in the last year have taken the time to trademark the phrase a trained customer is a retained customer
I
because
like that. That
thank
is
you.
clever.
I did, and I said it for years because we never want to put the emphasis on education because we're thinking cost center, cost center. And I'm like, no, reduction in attrition, like knowledge, like we will stay with the ugly product we know more than skipping to a new one. Now the cost of changing has been reduced greatly. However, it's still people like what they know. And some of the people that you most need to win on software like PSAs are accounting and finance individuals, and they will stick their heels in and like just make your life a living hell, lack of a better word, if you choose to change. And any PSA that has that accounting, financing, invoicing, billing, that kind of element to it, you have to consider that person, and that person is not going to like it. And if that person doesn't like it, your revenue is not getting out the door. So I don't
Oh,
care.
this is an
It's all
interesting
there is to it.
topic, because we talk. I talk to a lot of people on both sides of the aisle, MSPs and the vendors who sell them things, and and in both conversations, I'm like, what is your ideal customer, right? Like, what's the profile of who you're trying to sell to, so that we're not having the wrong fit. And it's funny when I talk to the vendors, particularly software vendors that sell to MSPs, they're like, well, we need an MSP that has adopted a PSA. And I'm like, okay. I was like, here's the problem. A lot of people buy it and then never do the right thing to use it. And like, that's where the mileage varies conversation comes in, right? Where like, like they're, we always hear they're only using 10%, 15%, 20% of the thing that we're talking
Right.
about. And
Right.
then, and then when you go to ask the question, right? Like when they're like, hey, do you tie into this? Like, I know plenty of MSPs, to the comment you just made earlier, that are not invoicing out of their PSA. And I'm like, that's half the magic, no? Like if that part isn't turned on, I think you're missing a lot of the whole point.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I was just talking to a peer that's doing some work with HubSpot. And I said, all I can tell you from 18 years of working in software and 2 or 3 of those of just doing straight implementations, all I did for a while, is that you need to dedicate someone to the process. And then you need to embrace training, embrace training other individuals, your newest people, embrace your new people going directly to that vendor to learn, because then you stay up to speed on what is new, what's been released. A lot of times we want to grapevine our training, and that's not the way to do it with those platforms. Like, let somebody who has the time go learn from the vendor, and good vendors should have opportunities for your new people to be trained directly from them. That doesn't cost you any money. I mean, I 100% agree with, I know, you can tell I'm not getting my paycheck anymore. But in reality, I mean, I agree in the certifications and those kind of things. Those are great to have, but there should be a way to get at least your average end user up to speed without having to pay, additional cost for that, because there's going to be turnover. And you want adoption to your platform. You want those brand new people to have learned directly from the source, be using it better than everyone else in the company, right? And have that one thing up. Like, as a new employee, what a great feeling to be like, I know this better than the dude who's been here 3 years because of how I've been trained.
I like that. So then the conversation just this past week, I was having with someone who was like, well, the side product that ties into the PSA ecosystem product that everybody's, whatever you're using to run your IT services business, technology business, is complicated to set up. And I'm like, but the PSA is complicated to set up. Like, who sets up the PSA, a real PSA, not just a ticketing system, a real PSA? What's this? You did it. What's the shortest amount of time it took to get that running? 10 hours? 15 hours, 20 hours. Like, it's not key start drive.
Yes. No, not at all. And that was a frustration early on. When Autotask was new, we had an occasional salesperson who might want to sell it as a Word document. And that was insanely frustrating. And luckily that got fixed pretty quickly, and we had a really good team that understood selling value. But that's the challenge. It's not, I mean, I would say honestly 20 to 30 hours, and real dedicated hours, not like, watching YouTube.
Hear this, guys. When you're watching this episode, 20 to 30 hours. Like yes. like when I see a vendor asking for 2 or 3 hours, and you're talking about plugging into a system that takes 30 hours to deploy, I mean, are we having the argument about its I mean, we are talking about a complicated conversation. No, I mean,
right. And I think the thing to remember is this: if you do this, as with everything, you're doing it in a phased approach, right? So that's not saying you're not using Autotask for 30 hours, right? In reality, Autotask, ConnectWise, whatever, there's elements that you can get up and running on. The problem is everybody does that little bit, like you said. I'm using it for ticketing. I remember the phone calls in the 08, 09 kind of crashing recession time, where people would call and be like, you're a really expensive ticketing system. And I wouldn't deny that. I'm like, you're right, because we're not a ticketing system. Like, you've got to start using this other elements and get rid of these other, and save yourself the time. And that's the problem with it, is that those 30 hours don't have to come in the first 3 weeks to get some value. You can get up and running quickly with some of these systems on the basics, but then you've got to be ready to continue to do phase 3 and phase 4 and phase 5 to get yourself completely together.
Time out. Listen, there's a lot of newer players in this conversation, right? PSA.
Yes. Yeah.
Here's the problem. The self-guided implementation usually fails. I'm just going to be honest with you, right? Like, hey, let me go through the document. Let me watch the videos. Let me click what they clicked and see if because these people who tried that route tend to not have enough dedicated time to follow the path to get to the end, right? They'll start, and then they'll get busy, and then they'll come back, and then they'll forget and then by the time it's done, it's half set up. And then, listen, I understand that, time has a value, and if somebody's charging you consulting to do it, but if how much more expensive is it to have a half working thing running for years? And then what I hear, and I don't know what your experience is, but I'm sure you'll tell us, is like sometimes they almost have to hit the reset button and start from scratch because it's so dirty. Like it almost doesn't, it's like too hard to clean up. You almost need to implement it.
Yes, I can't say that I heard. My knowledge of that, I would have to say, is probably 6 to 8 years old of how often, but I definitely had clients who would come back and be like, can we just start again? Right? Because and I don't know what vendors are doing to do a better job of that, because I know there was discussions in the House of Autotask of like, how do we help people with that? I don't know what Halo does or any of those guys, but when it comes down to it, I want to add to your point of, yeah, you try to give the dedicated hours. The other thing is that people are not good brainstorming with themselves. When it comes down to this process, you have to have somebody to bounce things off of. As a entrepreneur right now, I value the humans I still have in my life that I can say, is this a crazy idea? Does this make any sense? Because it makes perfect sense in my brain, right? And I'm currently setting up my own like little CRM, and I'm like, boy, that makes sense. And then I show it to even my husband, and he's like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, but it made perfect sense, right? You have to vet these things out with someone else because everything makes sense in our brain. And then you put it out in the wild, and people are like, what did you mean by insourced? Like insourced from this source or insourced from that source? Or what about this? You honestly need a group of people. And if you're trying to do it by yourself, if you're a one person shop, you're probably killing yourself with PSA. In all sincerity, you got to find a different way to get things started and think through. I keep pushing my clients to think 2 or 3 years down the road. And it's actually not that hard to do. Think about, if I add 3 people to this, is this going to make sense? And maybe you're in a peer group or something like that, right? And you need to go out and bounce that off to that peer group, or you just have people you've met at DattoCon or IT Nation or something like that. Get those people and get them together and be like, hey guys, I'll do this for you, guys and gals. I'll do this for you. You do this for me. I just need a gut check on the structure seems to make sense to me, but does it make sense to you? And there's a point where other people can't always inform, but you have to have more than one person helping you out on this.
That's fair. I think part of the problem, and we talked about this on the past sessions, but like, and you as an implementer, at least in your past, like somebody comes to you, they're like, what do people normally do? What do you recommend we should do here? And like, these are business decisions, right? Like the software, like, do you morph your business to how the software works, or do you morph the software to how the business works? This is like the age-old question that, by the way, in 2024 is still happening. It is still happening. So like, by the way, like, let's say you set it up in the default mode just to get it off the ground, and then you do add those 3-4 people. Now all of a sudden you might need to change this thing. It needs to work differently, right? And like, this is part of the people don't have the process down. People haven't documented how they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when it comes time to finally do that, like, they're almost restarting.
Yes. And a couple things I'll add to that. Simplicity is your friend at the beginning, right? I have a tendency, I'll tell you, I implemented a accounting of, what do I say, a fund-based accounting system in my church probably over a decade ago. And the MBA in me, who's had few too many financial accounting classes, had this massive structure of numbering sequence. And, and now my friend comes in and takes it over, and she's like, who did this? And I'm like, that would be me in my 40s when I wasn't smart. But it's true, like, simple is your best friend, because if I decide those ticket priorities or sources or whatever, just to make it, an easy conversation, don't fit for me, then I'm changing 3 and not 33. Like, so if you're really not sure, just keep it simple. And I know that sounds like what people hear, but we get excited and we start to think of all the different ways, oh, what I could do this and I could do this. And every single time you're looking at a configuration of a system, I would always say to people, think about how identifying that data is going to help you make decisions. And if you can't think of a way that tag or, priority or whatever is going to inform a decision, don't do it. Keep it at the higher level. And then when you can answer a question with it, bring it in. But that's the hard part of this. I mean, and I think, and you're not going to get it all right the first time. I just read a great book called Finish by John Acuff, and it really talks about how much perfectionism is just your outright enemy. Like there are people who have been a day away from launching their whole new, like beautiful line of art, and they've ripped the art up and shredded it because what if somebody doesn't like it, or what if we do this, or what if, and I always say to people, if your what ifs are like 10 to 15 to 20% likely to happen, forget about them. It's great that you're thinking through those scenarios, but you got to work to the 80% of the time. We can have an hour-long discussion on a scenario that happens 1 in 10 times. It's not helpful.
Fair. That's fair. Analysis by paralysis, or whatever they say.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, here's the problem. This technology industry that we all circle around, I mean, the average, company tends to have a lot of different things that they're juggling, right? Because that's, like, hey, if I sell more, I make more. And it's like, if you sell more, you have to deal with more. I don't know if it's actually profitable for you. And see, comes back to the whole business conversation again. Like, number one, bad customer, more time, you're not making money. Number two, just because somebody else says they're doing it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. If you can't find a way to do it scalably, profitably, consistently, reproducibly, then you're doing a lot of one-offs. A lot of one-offs mean that there is no documentation. It's all in your head, and the next person coming in behind you is relearning. None of this scales. None of this is good. This makes this business hard. And by the way, when you're putting in a system to help you do this, if it's not consistent and reproducible, how does the system help? You're just continually doing things every single time, and it's different. And like that doesn't get you anywhere other than nowhere.
Yes. In the last year, I've had interesting conversations with people about, well, who are you and what are you about? That sounds real, deep. But that's the reality of it. Your statement of just because someone else is doing this with this product means you can. No, you're right. It doesn't mean it, nor does it mean you should, nor does it mean it's healthy for you, nor does it mean it's going to improve your customer experience. Just selling more of a product could actually take down your profitability, because what does that product look like to invoice? How easy is it to service? How easy? I mean, all of these elements you have to think of.
To that point, right? Like, I think we've all, especially in the peer group lane, which is great, by the way. If you can, do it, right? Like, and I've seen some very good success stories coming out of, hey, instead of learning out of a book who's giving you ideas that haven't been really spelled out on what does it look like to actually do it, go talk to somebody who actually did something, and then find out from them why it worked or why it failed. I actually learned more from why it failed, but I digress. That's just me. Bottom line is, there's a lot of people who get up on the screen, a session, a breakout session, a PowerPoint, that tell you a lot of conceptual things, right? Like, this is no different than, school in a lot of cases, right? They're like, well, here's the theory behind this. And it's like, what's the real world story here? How does this apply? And so this is the problem I find constantly and still today in technology land, right? Like, you don't know what's happening until your boots on the ground and you're in the middle of it. Number one. Number two, you may not have the same capability as the next company, right? And so like you're dealing with a different set of cards. Okay. So like I want, if you want to learn what's the best way, what's the most efficient way to run your business, if you can, and I've been lucky, right? I've been able to walk in many technology businesses, many MSPs, and like open behind the curtain and actually see how it's done, right? But Darren Crane, thanks, says CW managed took over 40 hours of training in 2 months. Hold on, let me finish reading this. And 2 months to build before going live. That was about a decade ago. Refined over the years, we couldn't leave if we wanted to. True. It's like it takes a keen vision of your operations, finance, GL mapping, chart of accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Darren, I'm with you, man. And like, here's the problem. 100%. If you think about this, you said this was a decade ago. Start now. If you were to re-implement ConnectWise Manage today, would it still take you 40 hours of training? What, would you implement the system differently? You might, because your business has changed over 10 years, right? There's probably more people, more clients, more products. And like, by the way, the finance people need to be in the mix. To Melissa's point, here's the problem. A problem. When you're starting out, the finance person's outsourced, right? You're going to a third-party bookkeeper, a third-party CPA. They probably don't even understand how your business really works. They're just trying to get your taxes filed for you, right?
Yes.
The way
Yes.
your PSA wants your GL to be mapped is probably completely different than what they think, because they don't understand your business, right? Like, they're dealing with everybody, plumber, lawyer, etc. So like, this comes back down to, like, how do you, maximize, how, your business running, right? It's a combination of internal people, you, outside, etc. There's a big point, but probably, and I don't want to speak for you, Melissa, but like, there is a little bit of gold in having somebody giving you some of the answers up front, rather than waiting to learn every answer the hard way and then having to redo something. That's just me. What do you think?
100% agree. I mean, I am probably in my 30s. I still believed in like reinventing the wheel, because I got to do this. It's got to be there. And but I've become wise in the fact that you should learn from other people's mistakes. Um, Darren, I do see that comment. At this point, could become a ConnectWise consultant. I totally understand that. And you know what? The more mistakes you make, the better consultant you would be. I'll be honest with you. But it is definitely true. And I think that's why what you said there is really important. There are people who do actually understand the MSP DNA, if we want to call it that. And that is a huge benefit when you can find someone who's doing that bookkeeping or something like that, has some concept of even just a SaaS model, like, just understanding some of those things, because it's not easy and it takes a lot. And when you do first start out, you're looking at, yes, outsourcing that person. And, but I think owners don't realize they can explain things a little bit more simply than maybe they try to, or maybe they get an interim person who understands it, who can translate it to those third parties. But I want to speak to the point you said a little while ago about like hooking up software to these PSAs, right? That are not necessarily.
I mean, I'm going to go to DataCon, Melissa, and there's going to probably be 100 vendors there. I don't know. I didn't count, but I'm going to go find out. And they're going to sell me every possible thing that can hook into that system. Okay? Like, everything. And like, to the point where, I don't want to take you too far off topic, but like, people are going to buy stuff. They're going to swipe their credit card. They're going to get the show special. And 6 months from now, that thing that they just put in that's supposed to connect didn't even get implemented. Okay? So like, this happens all the time. So anyway, go ahead.
And I want to point to that because I work with clients where I think owners don't understand the impact of that on their team. I've had more than one client where I've talked with the team and they're like, well, they're going to go to this XYZ show, right? And they're going to come back with a new tool. And then we're never going to get into it. And we're going to bounce this way and that way. Owners do not see the ripple effect of doing that to their team and ultimately to their clients. Like, that's one of the things I look at, like, what does this changing over? I'm working with someone who has changed CRM packages 4 times this year. And
this year, are we even working at this point? Like, why are we doing it?
And I get it. And they were never very far into it. And I think they found the one, but it's a matter of really, I do videos every week. And the weeks that they're longest, they're the week that I spent the least amount of time on it. It's the old adage, right? I'd written you a shorter letter if only I had more time. And that's the point with any of these processes. If you sit down and think about, who are we? What are our goals? I could diatribe on the lack of goals in owners. Like, how do you're functioning? And you just need to focus on 2 or 3 things and always put your decisions through there. And if you're going to a show, it's okay to go look at new stuff, but is it applying to the 3 things you want to do in the next year? And who is going to own, who has the bandwidth, that's a word some hate, but it's a true statement, to actually implement this tool? Is it going to meet a need that you and your team have agreed is a true need and a challenge, and it needs to be fixed? And if it isn't, take a card, walk away, watch a demo, leave it. Because I think that's the challenge. I just think especially as companies grow, they are accustomed when they're that small company to be like, I'm just going to buy this, not going to be a big deal. But it's like it's like the rope, right near the source, there's a little bit. But when I whip that whip at the very end, there's a massive lash. And the bigger your company grows, the more the people at the end of that lash are feeling it. And you don't think they are. But they are. I hear it. I hear it all the time. And it can impact your customers too, because if your people feel out of sorts and discombobulated, unsure where they're headed next or what they should be using or doing, that comes out in your experience.
That's fair. No, I mean, discombobulation can be surely felt. That I'm with you on. I mean, at the end of the day, like, there are some more mature MSPs that I've run into, like they'll have a time of year where they evaluate things that they're potentially going to put in for the next year, right? Like they're very, like, they don't let change happen on the fly. They schedule change, right? Which is awesome. If you have the temperament and the, proper timing in your business to, be diligent like that, that's awesome. For everyone else, right, to your point, they stumble upon something as they're walking through and they're like, oh, that looks nice. And all of a sudden out it comes. I would just argue the question. And like, when you're shopping, right? If I go to buy a car, before I even walk onto the lot where that car lives, assuming you're not having a car delivered to you, I've probably done some homework, right? And some of the homework I would do before I buy is, tell me what the implementation process looks like. Do you have that in a document? Can I understand what a typical workflow of that looks like and how much time is required and who in my business is required to be involved? If I can get those answers now, I can make a time, analysis, right? And I think that's time is money, especially in a service-based business like an MSP. So like if I can make that time analysis up front, then the hard dollars may actually be the smaller part of what I'm putting into this, right?
Yes.
So a couple of things. So he did say he redid his chart of accounts based on service leadership 10 years later, I think. Darren, thanks for mentioning that, which I not surprised that happened. Degley comes in and says, I think as business owners, if we outsource our accounting, bookkeeping, or any other services, it's our responsibility to spend time with those people, thoroughly go over operations in that regard, just like we don't expect the same from our clients. Hey, I'm with you. Here's the thing. Is it unfair to say, Degley, that a lot of MSP business owners, and maybe this is why Melissa's saying, hey, like, why don't they have their mind made up, right, on what they're actually about and doing? Like they backed into MSP land. Maybe they're in internal IT or they were in corporate America. They bumped out website, MSP logo, boom, out, MSP. They never did chart of accounts before. They never did balance sheets before. Like they understand what's in the bank account. Do they even understand what profit and loss statement looks like? No. So they go to a finance person to say, help me do this because I don't know what I'm doing. Here's the problem. A generalist, which you'll find in any small Main Street America, who doesn't understand what the MSP business looks like, is going to set things up like they would for everybody else. Plumber, the doctor, the lawyer, the architect, who knows? PSA brings a whole different complexity to things, right? Like they're expecting like you have your game together, and like the outsourced bookkeeper that does a couple of hours a month of work probably doesn't understand that. That's just my 2 cents. It's what I've seen. So much so that some of the peer groups that we're referencing through this call, like go back. And the first thing that they talk about is you need to restructure your chart of accounts to assume that at someday you're going to sell your business. Not a bad concept, even if you never do, because the way that somebody looks at your business when they're buying it is not the same when you think about starting up your first QuickBooks account.
Yes, definitely true. And Degley, I think you're right. You said, we should be giving them that insight. And you're right. I think the problem is sometimes owners don't know themselves when they're getting started to be able to truly explain it. But 100%, it should be an explanation. It should be pretty clear to make sure they can understand what they need.
Right? It's like, well, you tell me the right way. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get you to the point where you can file your taxes. That's not the same, right? Like the PSA doesn't care about your taxes. They didn't build it with that in mind, pretty sure. So like, but if you go to the finance, like if you go to a CFO or an actual finance person that was in a larger MSP who like lived it, their opinion on things is going to wildly differ. I would assume that's probably the people that the PSA builders went to and said, why should the system work the way that you want it to? And explain it to me. That's my guess. I could be wrong.
That's what has,
Probably.
I think that's what's morphed it over the years, definitely, even just understanding geographies, right? My accountant actually just reached out to say, hey, by the way, I thought you had a client in California and you might have to file a separate tax return. And I was like, I might have to put a disclaimer on my services. They're not available in California. I mean, it's true. Like these are the little things you learn and you're like, ah, I don't want to have to do that, depending on what I had there. So it's all the ins and outs, but getting a professional, I fully embrace. And then understanding where the maturity is of your company. That's with what I'm working with now. I'm trying to work with clients to get the customer success team launched. Now, customer success is not account management. It is not the services team. It is a separate team. I know it's crazy, but some of the best MSPs I've seen will have somebody who's really focused.
What size MSP are you, like, puts in a customer success person or people? Like, how big are we talking here? Because like
usually, yeah, so it's a good question. Yeah, you're like, wait, how can you get to that point? It could just be one person. So I want to clarify that. It could just be one person. But usually it's somebody who is well staffed on their services team and pretty well staffed on their sales team. And they're ready for somebody who's just going to focus on retention of customers and revenue. And that can be, depending on how well organized you are, that could mean that you're a 15 to 20 person, or maybe you're more like a 25 to 50 person, depending on your organization. And I'm not delusional to think that sometimes this person's going to do some true account management stuff, but ideally, I think MSPs that are moving through a good maturity model are looking at these kind of things. They're looking at a success team and saying, okay, how does this impact my growth? And the thing about this person is they keep an ear to the client and an ear internally, right? So they might be that listening device you need to say, hey, CRM number 3, could we, just reality check here? I can't keep track, they can't keep track, that sort of thing. So they're sort of, they're an overseer of a lot of different things. But that's what I'm finding when I start to talk with people. Some really good companies that I see as some of the best MSPs have dedicated some time to this. Now, it's really hard to get them in my ideal of not doing selling, because I honestly think these people should not be commission based at all. But that's a hard thing. It's a cost center. It's, I honestly think that our old financial accounting model probably needs to be blown up when it comes to a SaaS life. And we need to look at things a little differently, but that's pretty big institution for me to take on.
No, I get it. Yeah. I mean, okay. So you're at a different maturity level when you can, number one, afford this. But number two, I mean, retention is not a small topic. It probably could do a whole hour on just this conversation, probably. But I would say definitely in SaaS land on the other side of the aisle, it is an analytic that's scrutinized, right? Like your churn or your, which ties to your retention. It's one-to-one, it's very strongly monitored, scrutinized, and like, they throw all sorts of fire at it. In the MSP, Melissa, though, like in your experience, the people you've worked with, are you finding MSPs getting to a point where they're concerned about their churn, which is why they need to put customer success in? Or is it like, are we flipping it around? It's like, if you don't put something in place now, this is going to be the result, and we're just being proactive. Is that what we're doing?
I think it's more proactive. Yeah, in most cases. Now, I have had people contact me and be like, hey, I haven't lost a customer in 18 years and I've lost 5 in the last, year. And so it's like, what's happening? And so they're looking into that. But I think it's proactive, and proactive is hard. People can't seem to justify but to me, when you say, afford, I could actually honestly say many people don't realize how much they're spending by not having one, right? How much their service team is doing the job of what a success manager would do, or how much their account management or even outside sales are ending up doing the job of what a success manager would do. And that's why the majority of this comes into play, because I also run into a lot of MSPs that don't have job descriptions for their people. And I'm like, well, you tell me you can't afford this, but do you know if anyone's even doing any of this? Do you know if that second or third support tech that you swear you need could not be maybe avoided if we took all the escalations and conversations from the support team and got them into one person, into one house, into, from the biggest clients. So, I mean, it's a tiered approach. You can't do success at the same level for every single client. But I do make the case that I think people think about it probably too late, and they don't think about, and I think in the environment where you're in, which I'm hearing a lot of people are not talking, I'm getting a ton of new logos, right? That's not the environment I'm hearing. I'm hearing more so we're retaining, and we might have a logo here and there, but that to me is, okay, this isn't just about retention, this is growth. Because when we get with people, and now in my mind, a customer success person does still do a business review, but they really are at a higher level of true strategy. If I'm doing my customer success job well, I understand to a large degree where my client is and where they want to be in a year and 3 years and 5 years. So I'm their strategist, not just like their technologist. And we are aware, and I'm helping them get there. And I'm digging deeper and building rapport, which builds retention, which builds revenue.
Hey, listen, the reality is that you got, I think, number one, if you're a smaller MSP, 5, 3, 7, luxury maybe at that size to do something like this, but the problem's still there, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
Although I've had this debate, I'm going to call it several times, right? Like well, hey, if they're a business and they're under 100 employees and they needed an MSP, then they already have an MSP. And so the only way you're getting new customers is if you're taking them away from another MSP. I'm not sure I subscribe to that. I really don't believe that of the 100% of businesses that would qualify and be able to afford an MSP, true proper MSP, that, I believe there's a large percentage of businesses that don't have one and that need one. Like, I still think there's a lot of upside. Now, I guess geography probably plays into that, right? If you're in a rural area and, and there's just only so many people, I understand. But like, take the NFL markets, which cover about 80% of the population of the United States of America. Okay.
NFL and Dollar General. Sorry. That's their business model. Sorry.
Dollar General. Take the Dollar General / NFL market. There's a lot of net new businesses that start on a regular, and if you're and don't get me wrong, they close too. But if they can make it, well, I know, and if they can make it past the first 3 years, generally they're on a track to growth, right? But if they fail in the first 3 years, then they weren't going to make it anyway, right? So, or that's what I've heard. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there. The question, Melissa, may be for the people that are just seeing a logo here and a logo there, they're really probably not concentrating on marketing and sales.
True. Yeah. But I think, so I think there's a point where you need to understand the experience you're putting people into before you keep driving on the marketing and sales side of things. Yes, you have to pay the bills, you have to pay your people, right? But there comes a point in your company where you're starting to get a pretty good cycle. It's not ideal, but you have to then wonder, okay, if I've got these logos currently in-house that are loving what I'm doing, right? I'm phenomenal. People talk about wonderful companies, right? Like they are going to be advocates, and they're going to connect, and to me, if you're not getting enough new logos, the instinct is immediately to go, I need up my sales and marketing effort. And I want to say, before you throw people into that funnel, could we understand what it looks like to be one of your clients? Could there be situations where it's not a good experience? And so you need to work on getting that a little bit better before you open the gates. It's like a soft opening in retail, right? So I open the doors to my brand new store and I let people sort of flow in, and I understand where are going to be my challenges. Where's my technology maybe not going to work? Where are people not going to understand the flow? Where are they going to, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, I actually announce it to the public. I think that's where we need to think a little bit more, is that if I am having this slow time, that I'm not immediately freaking out and going sales marketing crazy. I'm actually starting to say, am I listening to my customers? Do I have places where I'm actually surveying them? Am I taking in information? Am I taking in what my team is saying might be challenges or what have you? Because maybe 1 or 2 logos is actually all I can take on. Like I need more, but I'm really not sure I can give a good onboarding experience if I got 5 logos next month. And so all of those things, I think you have to answer, you ask some good questions when you're looking at a vendor, like how much time, where's the documentation, how I'm going to implement it, who has to be in the room. That's the same thing I think you have to look at with this is like, what happens if you actually do succeed with the sales and marketing effort? What are you putting them into? And do you have the structure to give a good experience? Because I'll tell you this, 1 or 2 logos that's having a good experience is a whole lot better for you than 5 that are just hating working with your company.
That's fair. I always somehow wiggle this into the conversation. Chick-fil-A, okay? I'm now down to grilled chicken only. Sorry, guys. Like the spicy chicken sandwich is out for me, but it's okay. Still do the grilled nuggets. They're great. They figured out how to get a lot of people through the drive-through process really fast and like efficient. And like they did the tablet thing and they're not, even if they're backed up around the corner, the sense to only take 10 minutes to get through like the 35 cars that are sitting there. And like, but the drive-through's been around since 50s, right? Since the highways were built, right? Like they figured out a way to take a single location and scale it, right? And hopefully other places have learned and figured it out too. At the end of the day, to your point, I don't know if it's customer journey mapping. I don't know if it's interviewing your existing customers to figure out what's good or bad. Maybe it's a combination of both. Customer experience has been talked about for as long as I've been in MSP IT land. But to the point of how mature does your MSP have to be in order to step back and actually spend time on it? Actually, I don't think you have to be very big. But when you start adding more people, you said earlier in this call, hey, what if I add 3 people to this? What does it look like? That's the jump right there, right? Like, can you get somebody else that isn't you to deliver as consistently as you did by yourself? Like that's the first challenge, right? So I think that's
right, and that's
experience can take it to that.
It's true, and it's coincidental. I didn't even plan this, but my video that launches today, because I do one weekly, is talking about that exact same thing, delegating what is in your MSP to other people so you as an owner can grip growth. So you can say, I'm going to hold on to the growth of my company. But you do that through something as simple as, I'm going to go walk through this. The number of owners that love to still procure and quote equipment is hilarious to me. So I love these people. I truly love them. But they're like, it's my baby. And so you schedule a Teams or a Zoom meeting with yourself to record and transcribe exactly what you're doing. And you talk through it like a software trainer. Anything you're doing on the computer screen, you are talking about what you're doing. So that transcription alone, especially if you're using like Copilot or something that's going to make it pretty already, becomes your documentation, right? And then you sit in on a meeting with the people you're going to delegate this to, and they follow that documentation. You have the documentation pulled up electronically. You cannot interject. They have to do it as you tell them. The moment they start to do something wrong, you can then say stop, and you fix your documentation, and they start up following it again. Because when you're done, that might seem tedious, but when you're done through like 1 hour meeting, there's a good chance that you have 1 or 2 quoting scenarios that are already covered. Now you have the documentation for it, and you oversaw the first time the person did a quote. They're done. And now you can start to go do that other stuff. So yes, I embrace and love the smaller MSPs 100%. And I think too many times they discount themselves and say, that's for the big guys. And I want to say, customer experience can be a listening post. It can be calling 1 customer a week who you service that week and asking them 3 questions and, and just having a bit of a conversation and trying to get and taking good notes. Again, transcribing, recording, like it's all so much easier than it was 10 years ago. And so use it to your advantage to understand what this all looks like.
That's interesting. I might try that. My team often tells me that I must use a different Google because I find things that they never found. And I'm like, I don't know, guys.
Yep. And that's it. Pull up the meeting and open it up, and there may be better tools, but that's just the easiest one in my mind.
I might have to
And
go. I
try to
might
get
have to
rid of
go
them.
to a live video on trying to teach people on how to properly pack their carry-on so that they don't have to check their bag.
I think that's a valuable tool. And with the amount of traveling you're doing in the next 4 weeks, like you are, yeah, you are definitely the one for it. So
I mean, several, if I told everyone that's ever come into my organization, I just said this yesterday, if I can teach you how to properly negotiate and how to live out of your carry-on bag so you don't have to check one, then I've given you valuable life skills that you will use forever and ever.
I tell you, absolutely. I studied abroad in Denmark and learned how to pack when I was in Europe because I didn't do it well before that. So I learned the hard way of dragging luggage, across the tarmac because I had to change planes and it was internet. From that point on, I didn't roll that way anymore.
So some tips if you're listening to this. One, air tags, get them. You will find your bags way faster when they're lost, and trust me, they'll pay for themselves. They're very inexpensive. Two, you do not need 14 pairs of shoes to go on a trip. You just don't need it. Stop at, like, I don't need cowboy boots in my bag. Okay, like hold off on the footwear. Can we do that for a second? All right, and then we'll get into properly, now that we have the ingredients for what's going to go into the bag, then we'll talk about how to properly stack the recipe so that you can put it all in the bag and it will zipper and you will just take that on with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care when I get onto the plane. I'm not one of these have to be group one guys. Okay. And it's sorry for the Southwest people because apparently there's going to be assigned seating. So it's coming. I just want to make sure my bag makes it up there. As long as it's on the plane with me and I don't have to let go of it, I'm good. Because then I know I don't have to wait and I know it's going to come with me off the plane like it came onto the plane. If those two things happen, we're good.
Definitely true. Definitely true. I'm the same way. I'm traveling by myself. So I just want to not have to check it because I have a 2-hour drive once I get off that plane most of the time. And I just want to get off, not be looking for that luggage and roll in. And yeah, the thing with luggage is big containers are not your friend. Like smaller pieces of things fit inside of things and around and on the corners underneath. Yes, yes.
Here's another pro tip way out of this. As long as that backpack or that bag can fit underneath the seat in front of you, you'd be surprised how big they can get.
Oh yeah, my backpack weighs more than my carry-on luggage. I have my backpack has weighed 42 pounds before, and my carry-on's usually 40.
Do not slip on a small bag. You can get a rather large bag that still fits underneath the seat in front of you.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I love it.
Georgia's School of Traveling. Okay.
Traveling, customer journey, traveling, it all fits together. It does.
I like it. Maybe I'm going to start doing this. Where do people find these videos that you're talking about? A little bit more about you and what you actually help with.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find the videos on YouTube. First Things First Training and Consulting, or just at FTFTAC. So first initial of all those words. I also post them on LinkedIn. So, but I'd love a couple more subscribers. So if anyone can humor me with that. I'm still close to a landmark milestone, and it's a tiny amount, but just a couple more will put me over. And I'm helping a lot of people with employee coaching, but I'm also doing the customer success team review. So I do have actually there's an assessment they can take on my website. So if you go to ftftac.com, go underneath the resources tabs, you'll see take the assessment. It starts to help you see, are you ready for this? Right. So it asks you some questions. And then if you're kind enough to give me your information, which I will not sell, I can reach out to you and we can have a discussion about where are you and where do I think you need to be? And a lot of it is business maturity, like you said, but some of it, I think smaller companies, please don't discount yourself. If there are people listening to this, they're like, I'm a 3-person, I'm out. No. Please fill out the assessment anyway, because the questions that are in there are going to help you think a little bit bigger. And I'm always happy to have a conversation about, why did I ask those things? Why are they important? And what is that going to help me do? Because what we're asking there are some organizational structure items, as well as who's in. Big thing that you'll learn as you grow as a company, the more people on board with an effort, the less of an effort it is. So you've got to have more people believing in what you want to do. And that goes for any of it. So this readiness assessment certainly sets you up for customer success, but it really just helps you understand the maturity of where you are and what you might be able to take on. So yeah, FTF, www.ftf.com, ftftac.com, and find me on LinkedIn. So.
All right. Yeah. So there's that. And so for anyone that's going to be at one of the 4 places that we talked about in the beginning of this, right? Berlin, DataCon Miami, DataCon Sydney, IT Nation Orlando, like, hey, like we can do the digital thing all day long. Let's do the in-person thing. So like drop us a line, let us know you're going. Maybe we'll meet for a beer, a sandwich, flow rider, who knows, right? But like love the opportunity to see people in person as much as possible while we can. Hopefully everybody in Florida is like not drowning and like above water. So please, again, stay safe if you're in that zone. We want to see a dry and, functional Florida later on next month there for both the DataCon Miami and or IT Nation Orlando events. And if for some reason you go to Melissa's LinkedIn and subscribe and like you want an extra bonus after you take the assessment, you can send me a message and I'll give you some tips, more tips on how to make sure you can get all that stuff in your bag. I can share.
It's a great plan.
Guys, this session was recorded. You'll find it shortly on mspinitiative.com under sessions. Thanks for following us. We do these a couple times a week, but obviously we're going to be on the road for a little bit here in gauntlet time of MSP land. So definitely follow us online as we're gallivanting around airports. Melissa, I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon, maybe on the 4th time. I'll come back with a tutorial on how to run the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
I think it's a great plan. I'm a huge Chick-fil-A fan, so sign me up.
Take it easy, guys. Catch you on the next one.
Hey, Jen, thanks.